Welcome to topic 12, the last of our topics in this Articulation short course. I hope you've learnt so much throughout this whole time. I know I really have. I've learnt a lot through my own research on the topic, by being reinvigorated about speaking about the topic, and then learning from all the amazing questions from all the participants as well. So thank you so much for being part of this amazing journey, all about articulation skills and how to deliver an articulation program. So in this topic, we're going to look at any behaviour difficulties that might arise and how we can best manage behaviour in the clients so that we can get on with the task of learning articulation skills. A great place to start for topic 12 is to revisit our learning zones. If you remember, we looked at these learning zones in topic 4, and then we referred to them all throughout topics 5, 6, 7 and 8. And the importance of the learning zones is to make sure that the client is engaged, also that the support person is engaged, and that everyone is being set up for success. We remember that we need to be in the yellow zone first, to be confident, to be relaxed, to be ready to learn. And then we need to help the client to get into the green zone where they'll be getting approximately 7, 8 or 9 out of 10 right each time they're trying a skill. And they'll get a real sense of accomplishment, but they'll definitely feel like they can achieve what's being put in front of them and they're getting more right than they're getting wrong. Sometimes when we have behaviour difficulties in a client, that could be lack of engagement, or even parents might say, oh, he's being stubborn, like someone that's really looking like they don't want to participate, or even telling you, I don't want to do this, telling you by their behaviour, maybe refusing to come to the table, refusing to stay in the room, or just simply saying, I don't want to do this, this is stupid. We really need to go back and check, has this child actually slipped into the red zone without us noticing? One of the first signs that your client might have slipped into the red zone is that they're not listening, they're not responding. Think a moment for yourself. If you're finding something a bit hard, do you always just say, oh, I'm sorry, this is too hard, I can't do it? Or do you find yourself sort of squirming a bit and thinking, maybe I'll do something else. Maybe I'll leave this. Maybe I just remembered I've got to do something else. So the child that's displaying those behaviours, they're giving you information that actually they're just finding this too hard. Let's have a look at those behaviours that are written now on the red zone area of the chart and just see if we can be on the lookout for some of these behaviours that show us that maybe the child's disengaging. So it's the avoidance. Could be the bravado, like the child that goes, I don't need to do that. That's so easy. Anyone can do that. I'm not practicing that because anyone can. I would say a lot of the time when there's behaviour difficulties in the articulation session, it's because the task has become difficult, and even the child that's getting 7 or 8 out of 10 right might be having to really concentrate a lot on what they're doing. And so they're going to tire very easily. So make sure you put plenty of breaks in and have plenty of activities which are back in the yellow zone. If the client is cooperative and happy in the yellow zone, and cooperative and happy when they're doing things that they can do, then that's a good indication that actually it's not that they don't want to interact with you or have fun or do what you say. It's just that they're just terrified to get something wrong, or they're exhausted, or they've just had enough of working on something that's hard. So remember, your job is to really keep them in the yellow zone and just dip your toe in the green zone. Make sure that they're well and truly in that green zone. Some people just go from yellow and they bypass green and they go straight to red. Sometimes children can be very good at learning and very happy to be pushed, and then we find that they're just having a day where that's not the case. So we really need to have a look at the role of emotion when we're learning. When someone is feeling fearful or worried, or could even be bored, anxious, they can actually find it quite hard to even listen. So the role of emotion, when we are emotional, when we're scared, when we're sick, when we're tired, hungry, parents will know this of their kids. Sometimes it's just before they get sick and you're like, oh, what's wrong with them? And the next day they come down and they're sick and they couldn't sort of tell us. I think when that happens, we need to even revisit those zones, don't we? So green might be really for just when you're getting 100% right, because it's taking all your energy to concentrate and get things right. And you're so fragile. If you get anything wrong, you don't have the resilience to cope. So you might find that a child that's sick or tired or scared, or maybe didn't get to eat that morning, or coming down with an ear infection, you might find that they really have this very narrow zone for learning before they get tired, or before they're just irritable or down on themselves. And if that's the case, really just help them, reassure them, and keep it all fun and positive, and try again the next session to push them a little bit. But there's no point in pushing a child that's displaying negative behaviours, especially if you can tell that they're just disengaging more and more, and they're just heading deeper into the red zone and possibly to black. Sometimes a parent will feel that they can push their child and they'll want to do that, and they might do that in front of you, and they might, be saying to the child, well, I don't mind if it's hard. They almost don't mind that the child is finding it difficult. They might think that that is a good way to learn. Now, if that works, and you'll find out pretty quickly, you can sit back, let the parent push the child, see if it works. Occasionally it does. Sometimes it works because the child feels sort of cornered, like backed into a corner, could even feel a bit threatened or a bit intimidated. Sometimes they try really hard because they want that situation to stop, but they'll fatigue very quickly like that. So, if that happens, try to consolidate yes, you got that right, well done, but still try to take the lead and then move them into something positive, because it might go well for a while, but then it can go pear-shaped really quickly, or they just won't want to come back the next time. So I think it's really important to take control of the session and to explain why you're going to do a task which is a little bit easier, or which is actually a break. We're going to have a break now and just do something that is really easy to do, that really engages and boosts confidence, and then we'll go back and try that. We might try it today, or we might save it till next time, because that's fine. And remember that the parent might be going into the red zone themselves because they're like, oh really, but I just want him to do it now. You know, we've come, we've turned up, we've paid for the session, and your job might just be to reassure them and say, that's okay, I can actually do a different activity. I might do some auditory bombardment, and remember, they still are learning. Sometimes you might get behaviour difficulties because the activity you've chosen just isn't meaningful for the client. We've talked about that a little bit with our CV syllables, or nonsense syllables. So if you're working on, for example, in syllables, nonsense syllables like fee, foo, fi, it might be a really good technique to use. But if that client's just like and squirmy and they don't want to do it, then move on to CVs that are real words, like let's do some counting and we'll count to 4. Or let's go for a drive in the car and we'll go far. So just find syllables that have meaning and see if the client responds more positively. If you find behaviour difficulties in the client, it might be that you're working very carefully and slowly through the hierarchy in the sessions, and you might be sending the parent home just to work on the sound in isolation, or the sound in word initial position, just one syllable word, CVC. But it might be that the parent hasn't really understood the importance of that, and at home they are expecting the child to make the sound correctly in all word positions, or in phrases or sentences, or even everyday conversation. And the child can really start to become resentful about any prompts or reminders with that speech sound, and the whole thing just becomes a bit negative. So just take some time to go through the importance of the hierarchy, and actually just specifically say to the parent, you don't need to be correcting your child all the time on this sound. In fact, I would ignore it if the sound's wrong when they're just chatting, and just have this one activity that you do, or this one word that you do, and just focus on that one. And really we're focusing on praise when they get it right. Let's just have a week where if they get it wrong, we don't do anything, except you might do some of that auditory bombardment yourself. So if they come up and say, I want ball biscuits, we're not going to say, it's not bore, it's 4, or can you try saying 4? We're just going to say, I think you want 4 biscuits with a that's a lot. I might just give you 2. So actually teach that technique. One of the things to do if there's behaviour difficulties in an articulation session is just have a look and see if the sound that has been chosen is really just not working for that child. Maybe go back to the speech pathologist and say, could we have a different sound to work on? Because I think we're just stuck with that sound and I just can't seem to make it positive. Now, if the speech pathologist can provide you with another sound and that goes really well, then that's a good indication that it was to do with the sound being too hard, or the child's just feeling stuck, or almost just bored or fatigued with that particular one, and they're needing some variety. If there's only one sound to work on, then I would suggest that you try some other techniques, like you might work on some keyword signing or finger spelling and associate it with that sound. You might work on some early literacy and where that sound is included. And so just get some guidance from the speech pathologist. If they're very young children, you could work on counting or numbers or letter recognition. And you could also work on some vocabulary groups, like let's find things which are transport or animals or household items or colours or places, and do some sorting. And as you're doing that, you can just be modelling slow, clear speech. If you've really gone through everything and nothing seems to be working, it's worth experimenting having the parent or the SLSO in the room versus out of the room, and just see if there's a difference in how the child behaves. In almost all cases, we want the adult or caregiver in the room, but just occasionally there might be some dynamic that you can control a little bit differently when you have the child by themselves. And so I would always give that a go and see what difference that makes. Another thing I would try is having the child be in the waiting room and just chatting to the parent, so the child's not listening, and saying, you know, what's going on in your lives at the moment that might be making just behaviour difficult in general. Maybe ask about how are they going sleeping? Are they enjoying school? Are they generally happy when they're not asked to do things? You know, do they occupy themselves? Now, you don't want to delve too deeply, but sometimes you just might find out. For example, I've had a client say, oh, well, she's got tonsillitis at the moment, or she's not sleeping, she's got sleep apnea, or we've got family staying from overseas and, you know, they're sleeping in a different room, and there just could be some reason. And then we can reassure them and say, well, learning is always hard, but when emotion or tiredness or fatigue impacting, it can be harder to learn. You know, do we need to have a little break at the moment? Or would you like me to go back to a sound that we used to work on that your child can do well now and just build their confidence back up? And the last thing I would suggest is sometimes with children that have multiple speech errors or have been in speech therapy for a long time, I suggest that the parent takes them to a shop, like a $2 shop or a reject shop, and allows them to spend just a little bit of money. It might only be $10, and say, why don't you just buy some really special things, some pens or pencils, stickers, stamps, a toy, some containers, and it's just for speech practice. And keep it in a place where no one else is allowed to play with it, where it's only brought out for some speech practice time. And just allow that child to feel special. If they're a bit older, I might talk about, you know, could you take your child out for a drive or a movie, or buy them something they want as a reward? Like, how about we will try hard on our speech activities for a whole week. We'll mark each time that we do it on the calendar, and then we'll get that special reward. Because sometimes what's missing is just effort and attempts at the practice. So the practice isn't being done. Maybe the parents sort of slipped into the red zone, child slipped into the red zone. Nobody really wants to do it. It's become a bit stale. And so there could be a reward for the parent too. Like, if you do it for 1 week and I help you, at the end of the week, we'll go to the movies and I'm going to get that choc top ice cream. Tell the parent to be supportive of themselves on their journey. You know, maybe they've had to help their child for a long time. And so your job is to really be that encourager and that supporter. If you try all of these things and you really get no improvement, then it's just possible that there's something else going on, something that's been missed. It could be a true behaviour problem. There could be something else that hasn't been diagnosed. But in most cases, the different ideas and techniques that I've said will bring about at least some change. Remember, if we do need to delve deeper into behaviour difficulties, a speech pathologist might liaise with a psychologist or a paediatrician, or an occupational therapist, or a behaviour specialist. But there's actually a lot that the speech pathologist can do themselves as part of their own core practice to work on behaviour, including looking at the child's receptive language and expressive language abilities and their problem solving. Well, thank you again for joining me on this journey. I've really enjoyed making the 12 videos on articulation skills, and I look forward to seeing you in the topic 12 tutorial, and maybe in our next lot of tutorials on phonemic and phonological awareness. Thank you. Bye.